The heavens quaked. The skies above Persia roared with fury. Somewhere beyond mortal sight, a clash so violent erupted, it scorched the very fabric of the unseen realm. Long ago, as the prophet Daniel fasted in silence, desperate for an answer from God, heaven responded. The Archangel Gabriel, mighty, radiant, unstoppable, was sent with a divine message that could change everything. But before he could reach the earth, he was intercepted. What rose to meet him was no ordinary demon. It was a prince, an ancient force cloaked in darkness, pulsing with fury forged in the fires of rebellion. And in the invisible skies above Persia, a war broke out. A celestial messenger, a demonic ruler. One mission that hell would do anything to stop. But what if that brutal delay, the clash in the heavens, wasn't just a random interference, but part of something far greater? Something that could shift the destiny of mankind itself. If you've ever felt like heaven was silent, comment 777. Because today, we're about to uncover what may have been happening in the invisible realms while the faithful waited below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you won't miss a single moment of this hidden war between light and darkness. This is not just a prophecy. This is Archangel Gabriel versus the demon prince. Archangel Gabriel versus the demon prince. The archangel, obedient and grateful, received the divine command from the Lord of Heaven with profound reverence. There was no hesitation, no questioning, only purpose. For Gabriel to be chosen for such a task was not merely an honor, but a declaration of trust. So he began the journey through the desert, descending from the radiant heights of heaven to the broken plains of earth, with one goal: to reach the chambers of the prophet Daniel, the one whose voice had pierced the silence of heaven, the one who was acclaiming mercy for himself and for Jerusalem. Every step of that long passage was sacred. The space between worlds is not empty. It is alive with forces unseen, some drawn to the light, others repelled by it. Gabriel traveled swiftly, his divine presence a beacon cutting through the dark vastness. And yet there ahead in the distance, he saw it, a dark shadow. At first, it lingered like a smudge on the edge of eternity, but as he looked to cross it, it grew sharper, closer, more defiant, and then it revealed its form. Suddenly and without warning, a terrifying being stood before him. It was not human. It was not even a beast. It was something far worse, something forged in rebellion, steeped in chaos. Its appearance was a mockery of heaven's design, its face like lightning, not to illuminate, but to scorch and blind. Its hands and feet are made of bronze, molded not for creation, but for destruction. Terrible horns curled from its head like a twisted crown, as if claiming dominion not by right, but by violence. And from its hollow gaze, frightful flashes of red light surged, pulsing with hatred. This was no mere demon. This was a prince, a ruler among fallen powers, a being who had once seen the light only to turn and embrace eternal darkness. And now, here he stood, interrupting Gabriel's sacred passage, an obstacle not of flesh, but of pure, unrelenting opposition. Why would such a creature rise now? Why block Gabriel's long journey toward earth? Could it be that this message for Daniel was so powerful, so dangerous to the forces of evil, that it had to be stopped at all costs? Imagine for a moment that you were Gabriel. You've been sent by God Himself. You carry truth, mercy, judgment. And yet this monstrous being now bars your path. Would you turn back? Would you fear? Or would you remember who sent you? As the two beings stood divine light facing infernal shadow, the cosmos itself seemed to hold its breath. Daniel, still kneeling and fasting, knew nothing of this confrontation. But above him, in the invisible heavens, a confrontation was forming that would shake even the angelic hosts. With unwavering resolve, Gabriel stood tall before the towering shadow, the divine light of heaven pulsing in his chest. His voice did not tremble. It rang with the full authority of the one who had sent him. Lifting his hand in command, the archangel declared, "In the name of the Lord, allow me the passage, or that his fury be unleashed before you." The words pierced the atmosphere like a bolt of judgment, sharp and absolute. But before silence could settle, the air cracked open with a sound that made the very foundations of the earthquake. A thunderous voice erupted, not of one creature, but of a multitude layered and grotesque, as if the depths of hell itself had spoken. "I am the Prince of Persia," came the voice, vibrating with ancient malice, the most powerful spiritual principality of war and confrontation against the people of God. His words dripped with venom and pride, challenging not just Gabriel, but the very throne of heaven. The insult was intolerable. The holy fire within Gabriel surged. At that moment, the offense burned hotter than flame. The kingdom of heaven had been mocked, and its servants defied. Enraged and unflinching, the archangel drew forth his powerful sword, its blade shimmering with divine fire. With a cry of righteousness, he launched himself against the demon, determined to get him out of the way, to defeat him, and to continue with his duty to deliver the message entrusted to him. But heaven's messenger had misjudged. This was no ordinary fiend. The sinister prince, this prince of Persia, possessed a strength forged in endless hatred. As Gabriel struck the demon's form, twisted with inhuman agility, dodging every attack with unnatural speed, thus began a great battle, one that would tear the spiritual realm asunder. With each blow, the prince shrieked blasphemies into the void, hurling them not only at Gabriel, but at God himself and the kingdom of heaven. The fury of the demonic principality exploded. His hands of bronze collided with Gabriel's light, and each impact reverberated like thunder. His strength was terrible, so overwhelming that Gabriel could not even land a blow. The archangel began to wonder, could he withstand this without divine assistance? Was this enemy too deeply rooted in the land of Persia, where the shadows reigned, and the worst of the infernal had taken root? Days passed, yet the confrontation gave no respite. Blow after blow, the sky above Persia echoed with the roar of battle, and the darkness of the region seemed to gather strength from the conflict. It was said that Persia had long been a domain of darkness, a stronghold where the worst and most terrible infernal beings lived, and now the truth of those words came alive in fire and blood. Day and night, the battle raged. The air thickened with the fury of celestial and infernal power clashing endlessly. And when the night came again, heavier and blacker than before, the Prince of Persia, seething in frustration, uttered a command. He called upon several warrior demons, hideous creatures bound by loyalty to the infernal throne, and in an instant they surrounded Gabriel, seeking to crush him under sheer numbers. But the archangel did not falter. With his sword gleaming in defiance, he stood firm. Gabriel defended himself with great haughtiness and courage, the same courage that had cast Lucifer from heaven. Though outnumbered and surrounded, he refused to bow. The most powerful demon in Persia, will be defeated by the power of God and by his most loyal servant. He declared, his voice resounding like a trumpet of war. The demonic prince, unshaken, let out a slight laugh, a sound colder than the void. "You think I am the end?" he sneered. "Here is a powerful warrior from the infernal kingdom, but a stronger and more hostile one is about to arrive to end the divine revelation to the people of God, the great demonic prince of Greece." The only and greatest objective of the Prince of Persia was singular, yet it carried devastating weight to stop Gabriel. Not to kill him, not to destroy him outright, but to prevent the message he carried from ever being delivered to its rightful receiver. For this was no ordinary message, it was a word from the Lord of Heaven, born from divine wisdom, one that could change the course of the human actor forever. This wasn't simply about a prophet or a prayer. It was about altering the trajectory of nations. So the forces of darkness rose with purpose. They understood that if Gabriel succeeded, the veil would be torn, and truth would break into the hearts of men. The demons, bound to the will of their master, longed to control the infernal kingdom, but even more so, they craved dominion over the living. They sought to twist the actions of people on earth, not for chaos alone, but for power. Every heart deceived, every soul led astray, was fuel to their ambition. Thus, battling with the emissaries of God was not a matter of pride. It was a sacred duty in their corrupted eyes. So they did what had not been done before. They overtook Gabriel, surrounded him with the darkest spirits of Persia, and chained him. Imagine it. The archangel, bound by infernal chains, held prisoner among the most macabre demons of the Persian dominion. A messenger of God, trapped not by ignorance, but by organized evil. Would you still believe if heaven's servant was imprisoned in hell's grasp? Yet, Gabriel did not give up. Though shackled in darkness, his faith burned hotter than fire. And when the moment came, when the slightest breach in his captor's guard appeared, he escaped, and the skies trembled as a battle broke out. Once again, his soul reignited in divine wrath, his sword seeking the Prince of Persia with unwavering fury. Several days had passed since Gabriel's departure to earth, and heaven had taken notice. From his throne, God saw all, and he knew. He knew that his servant was held by a darkness so deep that not even Gabriel, mighty though he was, could overcome it alone. So he called upon another, one whose name brought terror to the wicked, one whose presence was carved into the book of Revelation as the wielder of holy vengeance, the Archangel Michael. Michael did not wait. He descended swiftly along the path of the earth, blazing through the unseen layers of reality, determined to arrive in Persia. There, from the high places of the spiritual realm, he saw the grim truth. Gabriel and the Prince of Persia were still locked in combat. And in a moment that chilled even heaven's mightiest warrior, Michael saw the prince knock Gabriel down, mocking him, mocking God, and laughing as if victory had already been sealed. But mockery would not go unanswered. Furious and unrelenting, Michael descended his sword of justice, blazing brighter than 10,000 suns. He began to fight against the demon with great fury, for he could not comprehend how such a creature had drawn power so deep that it could defy the very messengers of God. Was Persia truly so corrupt that even angels faltered? Then Gabriel, gasping from exhaustion, lifted his gaze, and there he saw his brother, his equal, his companion in glory. A breath of tranquility filled Gabriel's being, not from rest, but from hope. He knew now he would not fight alone. Together, they would not falter. Both joined forces, their blades striking in harmony, each blow backed by eternity. Yet the infernal principality, scarred but not shaken, pressed on. He seemed unfazed, his demonic armor deflecting divine strikes. With his powerful sword, he fought back against Michael and Gabriel, and the two angels, exhausted from the endless confrontation, strained to stand beneath the weight of celestial warfare. Then came the 21st day. It was not an hour marked by clocks, but by divine decree. The power of God illuminated the battlefield. It wasn't light alone, it was authority, judgment, fire, and truth. A force descended that could not be defied. It flowed through Michael and surged through Gabriel, reigniting the hosts of heaven. With one final resounding blow, the sinister demon was knocked down, crushed under the brilliance of divine glory. And in that moment, swift as lightning, Gabriel escaped his wings, catching fire with heavenly speed. He tore through the realm of Persia, fleeing from the evil one, rising above the ruin. And finally, at last, he soared to fulfill the mission he had been given from the start, to deliver the sacred message that Daniel so expected for his people. Even as the wind of heaven carried him far from the battlefield, Gabriel could still hear the voice that had haunted him through fire and war. The prince of Persia, beaten but not destroyed, called out after him, his voice cutting through the unseen realms like poisoned steel. The fight is not over. Gabriel, he warned, his tone dripping with rage and vengeance. You have yet to face the most powerful of our warriors. Soon he will arrive in Persia, and when he does, a battle unlike any other will begin, a colossal war to crush the people of God and those who dare to protect them. And with those words echoing behind him, Gabriel fled, not in fear, but in mission. His escape was not surrender. It was strategy. The divine message had to be delivered. And so, he flew like lightning across the spirit-scarred skies of Persia, passing over ruins, curses, shadows, until at last he reached the place where hope still lingered, the banks of the Tigris River. There, beneath the veil of mortal silence, Daniel knelt, his heart heavy, his body weakened, but his faith unshaken. He had been meditating, waiting endlessly for a whisper from heaven. He did not know the battles that had been fought for his sake. He could not see the wounds that heaven bore for his prayer, and yet he waited, his face turned toward the heavens, unmoving, enduring. Suddenly, the darkness before him parted, and a great light illuminated Daniel's face. It was not the sun. It was not of this earth. It was the glory of one who had stood in the presence of the Almighty. The celestial light wrapped around Daniel's being like a mantle, and though he had been lost in thought, he woke up, awakened not by sound, but by divine presence. His spirit recognized what his eyes could not explain. He was no longer alone. He was standing in the presence of one sent by God. Can you imagine it? After weeks of silence, tears, fasting, what would it feel like to look up and realize that heaven had heard you all along? Then, with a voice that trembled neither from exhaustion nor pride, but with the clarity of divine purpose, Gabriel spoke. Do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you gave your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words have been heard. And I myself have come because of your words. Daniel 10:12. The words struck Daniel like thunder and mercy at once. His heart quickened within him. His mind reeled. Was it true that his prayer had traveled into the heart of heaven? That from the very moment he had bowed in repentance, God had responded, overwhelmed with awe, Daniel's knees gave way, and he rose only to kneel again, falling before the messenger of glory. This was no dream. This was not my imagination. The answer had come, and it had arrived through a messenger who had crossed through darkness, fury, and war for him. With the golden light of heaven still resting over the quiet waters of the Tigris River, Gabriel finally stood face to face with the man whose prayers had reached the courts of the Almighty. And now, with the dust of battle still clinging to his wings, the archangel began to speak, not with majesty, but with intimacy, as one messenger speaking to a faithful son of God. Dear Daniel, he began, his voice gentle but weighted with eternal gravity. The prince of the royal region of Persia was planted in opposition to me for 21 days. He kept me in Persia, locked in an endless war. But I have managed to come to you thanks to Michael, one of the prominent princes of the kingdom of heaven, who came to help me. Daniel stood in silence. His body was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer overload of celestial reality pressing upon his human frame. His mind was stunned, disoriented, unable to fully grasp what the angel was telling him. How could he comprehend that for 3 weeks his prayers had been entangled in an unseen battle, held back not by silence, but by war? What would you feel if you knew that the heavens had answered, but the delivery had to be fought? For blade against blade, Gabriel saw the confusion in Daniel's eyes and stepped closer, lowering his voice to a tone more urgent, more tender. Pay attention, Daniel, he said, because your understanding is necessary for what I will reveal to you. For according to the scriptures, this is a revelation for the last days that are still far away, yet written in eternity. But Daniel, though faithful and resolute, was a man of age. His frame was frail, his years heavy, and in the presence of the divine, his strength faltered. He fainted again and again, overwhelmed by the weight of heavenly glory and the message still unspoken. Yet Gabriel, full of mercy, reached forth and offered him a breath, not air, but a breath of encouragement, holy and unseen, and with it, Daniel was revived. His vision steadied, his ears opened, and the words from the archangel's mouth became clear, no longer veiled in mystery. Then Gabriel looked toward the horizon, as if his heart was already returning to the war beyond. Now I will return to fight against the terrible demon of Persia. The same prince who held me back and delayed the message I brought. Even now, he is fighting with Michael, who has come to take his place beside you. Michael will now be your Prince Daniel. He is chief among the angels, the most powerful, the one whom heaven has appointed to stand over your people. Can you imagine what it meant to be told that Michael, heaven's greatest warrior, would now stand as protector of your nation? Gabriel continued, his voice strong, but his farewell drawing near. As soon as I return, the battle will be easier, for now I am no longer alone. I have the help of Michael, the only one who came. But then his tone shifted, and a shadow passed over his words. Yet we will not rest, for when I return, another will have arrived. One greater in hostility and power. The great prince of Greece, warrior of the evil one, is coming. These were not threats. These were warnings, prophecies, divine truths whispered in mortal time. And with that, Gabriel said goodbye to the prophet Daniel, the man who fasted, who prayed, who endured in silence while the heavens waged war on his behalf. Back in the kingdom of Persia, the skies burned with smoke and fury. The desert, once a land of silence and dust, had become a battlefield where heaven and hell clashed with unrelenting rage. Gabriel, having fulfilled his divine task, now turned his eyes back toward the land from which he had fled, and what he saw struck him with awe and grief. Michael, the archangel of wrath and justice, was still locked in combat, and even now, the evil prince did not appease his power. He fought with the same ruthless intensity, resisting the light unshaken by the presence of heaven's mightiest warrior. They continued facing each other with great fervor and strength, neither yielding, neither retreating. The war had not faded. It had grown. Around them, the very air tore open, and from the cracks of the underworld, an army emerged. Thousands of demons, hideous and enraged, poured into the desert like a flood of shadows. Their presence darkened the desert, blotting out the light like a storm of living hate. The sands beneath trembled, and the skies above groaned as the legions of darkness moved to overwhelm the forces of God. And yet the chiefs of the heavens, led by Michael, did not falter. Their swords burned with holy fire. Their wings tore through the enemy with divine precision. But the battle was not even. This was not a skirmish. This was an invasion, a siege of cosmic scale. A great, endless fight broke out in Persia, a war not marked by days or nights, but by the agony of resistance. The infernal prince, already terrifying in strength, seemed to grow stronger with every blow. He was indestructible, not in body alone, but in the force of his hatred. Michael struck with power, drawn from the throne of God, yet still the demon withstood it. What kind of evil could resist the chief of heaven's armies? Can you imagine standing on that battlefield with heaven behind you, but hell before you, and no end in sight? But worse still was the prophecy whispered between the fallen that soon a demon even more powerful than him would arrive. A being so malevolent, so devastating, that even the chief prince of darkness would bow in his presence. And when that moment came, the battle would shift, not toward peace, but into something far darker. What happens when evil evolves beyond what heaven has prepared for? What if this is not a single war, but a war without end? It is said that the great battle of good against evil never ended, that in the unseen realm it still rages, that the skies over Persia still echo with the clash of angelic steel and infernal wrath, and perhaps even now, that greater evil is already here. In the story of Gabriel and the demon prince, we did not merely witness a celestial battle. We were invited to peer into the unseen war that has always raged behind the curtain of this world, a war where the stakes are not lands or riches, but souls. And in that war, one truth stands taller than any mountain faith alone sustains the servants of God. Think for a moment about Gabriel. He was chosen by the Lord of hosts to carry a message of life, of prophecy, of divine revelation to one humble servant named Daniel. The journey should have been swift, but instead, it was met with resistance so fierce, so unrelenting, that even an archangel being forged in the heart of heaven was brought to the edge of defeat. And yet, he did not give up. What makes someone like Gabriel keep going? When days turned to weeks, when chains bound his strength, when the sands of Persia were darkened with demons, and defeat felt inevitable, what gave him the power to rise and fight again? It was obedience, conviction, and above all, faith. He knew the message he carried wasn't just words, it was destiny. It was hope for a man who had knelt in the dust for 21 days, asking not for riches or revenge, but for mercy. Gabriel knew his fight was not about his own glory. It was about God's plan for God's people. And so, even as infernal armies rose up against him, he kept going. He trusted in heaven's timing, not his own. How often do we, like Gabriel, face opposition when we are doing what is right? How many times have you felt delayed, exhausted, pushed to your limit, just for trying to follow what you believe is good and true? This story speaks directly to those moments. It reminds us that delays are not denials, that the darkness may be powerful, but it is never sovereign, that no matter how many demons stand in the desert to block our way, the God of heaven will always send help, sometimes in the form of a breakthrough, sometimes in the form of another warrior like Michael, but always, always in the form of a divine promise that cannot be broken. And maybe that's where you find yourself right now. You've been praying, waiting, fasting, even not with food, but in patience. Maybe you've seen visions like Daniel of a world broken by sin. Maybe you've cried out for your family, your nation, your soul. And like Daniel, you've heard no answer. Not yet. But do not lose heart, because somewhere in the spirit realm, Gabriel is fighting for you. A battle is raging over your life that you cannot see. But heaven is not silent. Your prayers have been heard since the first day you whispered them. And if you hold on, if you endure, you will see the light break through. And when it does, it will not come gently. It will come like Gabriel, by the Tigris wrapped in fire and glory, speaking the words you've longed to hear. Do not be afraid. Your words have been heard. This story also teaches us something vital about spiritual warfare. Evil is organized. Evil is strategic. The Prince of Persia, the Prince of Greece, represents not just random attacks, but dark structures, principalities that seek to shape the destiny of entire regions, peoples, and generations. They aim to delay, to distract, and ultimately to destroy the messengers of truth. But take heart, they do not win. The archangels of heaven are not symbols of myth. They are agents of God's justice. And when Michael enters the battlefield, evil trembles. So let me ask you this. Have you been standing still when you should be fighting? Have you forgotten that you too have a message to deliver, a purpose written in the scrolls of heaven itself? What if the very struggles you're facing are because you carry something the enemy fears? What if the opposition isn't a sign of failure, but a sign that you are moving in the right direction? You may not wield a flaming sword or shine like lightning, but make no mistake, if you stand for truth, you are a soldier in this divine war. And if you walk with God, you never walk alone. So rise up. This generation needs Daniels, who will kneel even when heaven seems silent. It needs Gabriels, who will go even when the road is blocked by darkness. It needs Michaels, who will fight for those who can no longer stand. And if you believe that light will conquer darkness, if you believe that God still speaks, still fights, and still delivers, then comment 777 down below. Let heaven see who still believes. Let this comment section become a battlefield of faith, a place where warriors of light unite across the nations. And if this message stirred something inside of you, if you felt heaven brush past you as the words were read, then please like this video. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next revelation. This is not just a series. It is a journey through the unseen, a fellowship of the faithful. To every one of you who has watched to this point, thank you. You are not just a viewer. You are a part of something greater. And I truly pray that the God who sent Gabriel to Daniel would send his angels to you, that your prayers would not return void, that your faith would not break, and that your purpose would be fulfilled no matter how dark the desert or how long the delay. May the blessing of the Most High cover you. May his angels surround your home, and may you, like Daniel, see the day when the heavens open and the voice of God says, "You are highly esteemed." Until then, keep praying, keep standing, and never forget the war is real, but so is the victory. God bless you.